Hello and welcome back to another Player 2 review discussion. My name is Paul James. Today I'm joined by Player 2 editor and legend, Matt Hewson. How are you, mate?
I'm good. Back on the work gear again. Still on the dodgy microphone, so sorry if I sound worse than normal.
I mean, better that than the dodgy internet that you're still rocking at the moment. So
Yeah,
we do what we're going to do to make it work.
we do.
For anyone potentially listening on podcast feeds, if you're a YouTube viewer, you should be able to tell quite clearly by now that we're talking about Halo Infinite. You and I have both had access for a while. You had even earlier access than myself. You had some preview coverage that you did a while back. We've now both been playing the review build, and we're going to discuss the game in some depth without going into spoilers because that would be dickish of us.
Halo has story.
It has a story. It
Yep.
may be good, it may be bad. We'll discuss that shortly, but we won't spoil any of it on you. So, Matt, you're the one that's put together the review for the Player 2 website.
Putting
Together. I'm trying to juggle the tense because this is going live at embargo.
Tonight,
Yeah.
I promise.
It'll be up by the time this video goes out, so look forward to that. But tell me what you think of Halo Infinite.
Look, it's a real return to form, I think, for the franchise. 343 Studios kind of got the story part right in 4, but didn't get the multiplayer right.
Yeah.
And then they got the multiplayer right in 5, which was fantastic. I love the multiplayer in 5.
Butchered the story.
Really ballsed up the story. They've managed to get them both together, it seems, in this point in time. Obviously, the multiplayer is going through a lot of tweaks and fixes as it goes on, because it's still technically in beta.
Which is a load of bullshit, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I think they're just using that pre-season to, work out the balances and stuff.
I mean, using that
like
pre-season language is the perfect way to describe it because, it's, hey, this is our pre-season, we'll tweak and whatever, so that come the big leagues on December 9th, we can go.
Yeah, exactly. So we won't talk too much about the multiplayer because it's out there. You can play it.
Yeah,
go play it.
Everyone's had their say on that one so far, so
Yeah.
we're really going to pick through the campaign because that's what you and I have been spending most of our time playing lately.
Yeah, and it's a good chunk of time too. Like it's not a short game. It's got a good length to it. I would guess doing most things, it's about the 16-hour mark would be my guess.
That's the number you threw at me when you said you'd done about 3/4 of the extra stuff. Yeah,
about 3/4 of the extra stuff. I went back and took some screenshots and started tidying up a few more things that I missed too. So it's got a good heft to it. I mean, if you wanted to completionist run, I say it could probably easily run 18 to 20 hours. I would guess. Yeah. If you were doing the full thing.
I mean, I'm not done. I've been kind of checking in with from the moment you finished. I've been checking in with you, saying, "Okay, I've done this. How far off am I?" And you seem to be indicating I might have it at an hour or two left.
Yeah, probably 2 hours left, I'd say. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I've been as... I guess because I had significantly less time to play it than you did, I've been a little bit more golden pathing it. Still been exploring the side stuff in the open world. And I guess that was my big concern going into it. Is, okay, you're looking to kind of turn it into an open world game. Great. Is this going to become a Ubisoft thing, which is where they're just going to throw too much stuff at you? And they don't.
No, not at all. It's very much the open world component's very much like a breathing space between the quite intense, like, focused traditional Halo missions. Like, the story missions are still what you would expect from a Halo game. They're very focused, they're story driven, you go through a set path that's very linear. But then after you finish that, you get some time in this open world to breathe and, tackle some side things if you'd like, if you want to upgrade your suit, or if you want to just tool around and free some Marines from captivity, you can do that. It's just a little bit of breather between the intensity that are the...
And you're still rewarded for doing that too, whether it's the Spartan cores or by kind of taking down the outposts and kind of acquiring the FOBs. That's giving you points that you can fast travel to. You've got the high profile targets, which are really nice challenges as well.
Upgradable weapons then. So when you take out a high target, you get an upgraded version of an existing weapon with extra boosts of that weapon, and they're all worth chasing down because they're all very good.
Yeah, it's not. There's no bloat, I guess, is the thing to the open world, which does. That was kind of my big concern going into it, and they've actually managed to make sure that whatever goes in, it's meaningful and it's valuable, It's entertaining and engaging and challenging in just the right ways. And then there's the actual core campaign itself in terms of the actual main missions, which are Halo to the core.
Absolutely. And what they've done with this one too is, in previous Halo games, I've found myself always sticking to almost the traditional weapon loadout that I played in the first game.
Yep.
Because you know, they got it so right in the first game with those weapons that they had, and
The pistol.
the longest
That's all you
time,
need. The pistol.
I've held with those weapons, but now there's a lot of new weapons in Halo 6 that haven't been in the previous games, and they're all exceptional. They all have their purpose. They're all really well thought out, all really well designed, and they're a joy to use. Like, what's always made Halo so great is that ebb and flow of combat between, you know, you having two weapons and using those two weapons in meaningful ways against enemies. Even more so now, it pays to have, so they've broken it down into 4 categories now, which is kinetic, plasma, shock, and
starts with
whatever
H. It's kind of this purple. I can't think of the name.
It's the Forerunner weapon anyway. So the Forerunner weapons, and each of those have a bonus, and you really need to have 2 different types of weapon in your kit at all times, because enemies are significantly tougher if you don't have the right weapon to take them on. For example, the Jackals, even with the Jackals with their shield, which is a basic Halo enemy type, they're significantly tougher these days if you don't have a plasma weapon. You really have to get in close and get behind them if you don't have a plasma weapon handy. Whereas the plasma weapon takes down their shield really quickly, and you can take them down quite fast.
To be fair, things like the obviously the grapple shot that we've now got in there do, like, if you don't have that correct weapon with you for something like a Jackal, this doesn't apply to every single weapon because there are big heavies in there that'll beat the shit out of you if you get too close. But like, if you do find yourself in an instance where this is a stock standard enemy, I should be able to take this out, but I don't have the right weapon with me, grapple them, that knocks the shield out of the way, grapple them again, pulls you close, melee, job done. So you've got ways around it. Oh, it works a treat. This is like, I thought
the grapple hook is amazing.
Yeah, I thought what it did with Doom Eternal was great with the grapple hook, but it's even better here.
It's just the best addition to Halo, because all of a sudden verticality is a real thing now, especially in the open world areas. There's nowhere that's out of reach. I purposely went looking for the edge of the map, and climbing up some significantly high mountains and things, and you can get there.
Yeah.
If you know, the game doesn't stop you from doing it. And there's actually just
to see what happens.
Into space. So yeah, for those that don't know, the ring that you're on this time, Zeta Halo, has been in some sort of explosion, which I won't ruin what happened there. But so there's bits and pieces missing of the Halo ring itself, so you can fall off into space if you jump off the edge.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can throw the lightest bit out there because it's already available to people. You know, like Atriox is a big part of it in terms of what happens there, and you know, kind of is the driving force. Now, I didn't actually know Atriox, so I hadn't really messed around with Halo Wars, which is obviously where he kind of hails from, and that didn't. If I kind of sidestep into the story stuff, that didn't hurt the experience for me at all. They did a really good job of kind of.
They haven't assumed that
he's a big bad
Halo
guy.
War.
He's kind of the toughest guy, and look out, he's got history and he'll kick your ass. And even if you didn't buy into that just from the little bit of background, they show it at the beginning. They show how and why. They show Master Chief how and why he's so good, and that's all you need to know. Okay, I need to take this guy seriously. That's it. We're on. Yes. And then the threat that he kind of represents for the entirety of the narrative. So I was really in on that straight away. It's pretty cool.
They seem always the enemies in Halo have been almost religious. They've been zealots. Like the Covenant is a religious group at its core, whereas this core, the Banished, they're made of people that didn't agree with the Covenant. So that's their backstory. They were exiled from the Covenant because they didn't agree with them.
They were banished.
Yes, hence the name. But they are warriors to a core, and that they're very much a warrior society. So I guess you consider them to be the equivalent of a Spartan society, in that everything they do is about the glory of combat and the glory of victory and things like that. So motives are built around testing themselves, around being the ultimate warriors. So it's a very different motive from the bad guy this time around to
Yep.
what we've seen in Halo in the past. And it's really quite refreshing, actually. We're not dealing with religious mumbo jumbo about belief of the Forerunners, and the Forerunners are there, and all their bits and pieces are there, but they kind of take a back seat.
Yeah.
And there's some really cool little things to find, and audio logs and stuff that give you more Forerunner backstory, which is really interesting. But they're not essential. That's just tasty little tidbits on the side. This is really a story about the Banished almost ending humanity on this ring, and the Master Chief fighting back. So
yeah, him being the kind of the last great hope, which is, I guess, that's the chief narrative. But, that in itself is kind of well worn, but the way they deliver it is still really, really fascinating. Yeah. And then you've got this dynamic between what I've been dubbing New Cortana and Chief.
Weapon. Her name in the game is Weapon.
Yeah.
And the Echo 316, which is the pilot, which you see in all the trailers, and then Master Chief. So they're the three main characters that you and there's quite a good interplay between the three of them.
Yeah, I mean they're each kind of depending on each other in different ways, and when things start to go a little awry, which for me I'm just starting to see things starting to go a little bit pear-shaped, that dynamic is being tested, and you can see the strain on all three of them in different ways. Even Master Chief, which is really, really fascinating, because he's always just been you don't have to worry about, like, who cares what else is going on. He's always going to be 100% focused on the mission and totally dependable, and he'll just get the job done. And you can just see with that strain from the dynamic, and the still, and they're not driving the message home as hard as they did in Halo 5 about, Chief and what happened with Cortana and all that sort of stuff. But you can still see little hints of that strain, like that, what had happened and those memories, and how it's driving him to not make similar sort of mistakes. He references that a couple times, and that impacts the relationship, because it's not just up here; it's also verbalized. So,
I think it's fair to say Halo 5 changed the Master Chief.
Yeah.
And the way the game ends, that's even, I guess, more significant. But Halo 5's story, while not greatest, it does have impact in this game. It isn't forgotten. They haven't just deleted it from memory.
They didn't try and Last Jedi it.
No, they've just they've somehow made it better. Actually, like, knowing what I know now, the story of Halo 5 is better. How it was told wasn't exactly great, but the story is better.
Does it make you like Locke anymore?
Nah, unfortunately, he was a bit of a dick. No, he was much better as Luke Cage in the Marvel series, but so I think they've done a really good job there in not retconning Halo 5, but using it as a means for growth for the Master Chief, and seeing emotion from the Master Chief of any kind. So he's not just a soldier now. Not just a
robot.
He's John now. He's not 117, I guess.
Yeah, and we have seen that kind of growth over the last few, but certainly really comes to a head here. So it was really good to see. The gunplay awesome. Feels as good as ever. And again, I guess we've already referenced the grapple shot, but like, it really complements everything there. I referenced that example with the Jackal before, but from what you then highlighted with the platforming to all of those things, like, it comes together in a really cohesive whole. Everything fits, which is good, because something like a grapple shot, would
break things.
Yeah,
but they haven't. It's superbly balanced, and honestly, the rest of the gadgets that you get, they're pretty useless. You don't need them. I don't use them at all. Apart from the initial mission where you get them, that's the only time you ever use them. After that, it's just the grapple shot. That's all you need.
It's like with all the Spartan cores, for example. Now, to kind of explain that for people, like, they're basically skill points, essentially. Like, you collect them and they become skill points that you can attribute to whatever. Like, I've just invested all of mine into the shield because I didn't need the other things. Like, they're just irrelevant.
Pretty much.
Even the grapple shot I didn't bother too much with.
Oh, it gets a real cool shock feature where it shocks the enemy. Yeah, so you upgrade it and it shocks the enemy as you zip in, and then you smash them. And if you've got a melee weapon, like a sword or a hammer, it triples the damage that does if you
Ooh.
zoom in with it. Yeah. So
This
it
changes
makes,
things.
yeah, it's a really good way to get some of those really tough brute enemies quickly, because
Yeah.
there's some really quite challenging enemies. Even just in not talking about boss or elite, like critical enemies. These are just standard grunts that are running around, but they can be quite tough. Even the general old grunts these time are a lot tougher than they used to
Yeah.
be. The AI seems improved. The
And
hunters
which
this
says a lot because
time
the
are
AI was always good.
tough.
And the hunters, yeah. Yeah.
The hunters are properly tough this time. Like,
You need those forerunner weapons, I've been finding. Like, if I've got those, I
yeah,
can take a bit of a sigh of relief. But even then, it's still not easy.
you get caught out with some basic weapons against a hunter and you're dodging for your life and trying to get shots in their weak spots in the back and zipping around with the grapple hook. And yeah, it makes just some super engaging combat, like challenging, but really a lot of fun.
And look, I mean, with the hunters, I did find myself cheesing a little bit every now and then. Like, okay, I'm just gonna. I found this
Like
spot
in the
and
bushes.
yeah, pop in and out, and
Yeah.
like because of the fact they have gone more open world, there are these opportunities where you can kind of, and because everything's so vertical, you can kind of get up nice and high and then squeeze into a gap, and then there's a little slot there that you can shoot from. Which obviously, if they decide to turn and fire at it, they shoot basically big pulse cannons and whatnot, and can still get you through the wall just from the explosion, but. Like, I can sneak a few shots away and then back up far enough that they can't get me, and I'll just in and out and in and out until the job's done. But and that's in those scenarios where I've totally got the wrong weapon. But I guess they still do a really good job, regardless of the circumstance and regardless of what you go in with. There's always a weapon rack nearby.
Yeah, and there's always something that'll get the job done.
Yeah. And it's not always just a weapon rack sometimes either. Sometimes you'll just find, like, hey, there's a giant heavy weapon sitting right here against this rock, and it wasn't someone you killed previously.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's usually a queue, but
it's the old, you walk into a room full of health pickups and go, oh fuck, here we go.
but at the same time, like, there's a few of those, like, it's just been like it's randomly sitting there. It's not like they're not putting the neon sign on either. It's just there, which is like, there are the ones that they do signpost for you, especially in kind of the main missions. If you see the rack and it's got some big heavy things, you're going, okay, here we go, crack some knuckles, let's go. But every now and then you just see, like, in that open world, you just randomly see one there, like, holy shit, like, I just stumbled onto this, but this is making all the difference now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially
it's very well designed, like very balanced.
Yeah.
They've pretty much, like, a problem with the open worlds is it often gets out of balance because you've got so much space to play in, I guess. But they've thought about the encounters and placed the encounters in such a way that it's all very well thought out, and there's always meaning to the seeming madness that you have. So they've done an incredible job of that, to be honest. I mean, Ubisoft and that could take cues from them with some of their open world things in how well balanced these spots are that they're in. There's that, I guess, Far Cry feeling with the outposts, which are the FOB base. But each of those is slightly different. Each of those has different enemies at them. They might have some vehicles there that you've got to take into account. Whereas it never gets stale at all. They've created it in such a way that it's engaging every single time you do it.
But I guess one of the big key things, and if you compare it to basically any Ubisoft open world game, is the fact that in those, because they've let more and more into the RPG side of things in recent years, there is this constant need to better your stats.
Yeah.
Here, it's not. It's more traditional in that sense, where it's an open world, but like, you could chase none of those Spartan cores if you want. You don't have to up your skills in anything. It was like the statistical side. Sorry, I should say. You want to up your personal ability with gun in hand, but like, if you're capable, you're still going to be okay. Like, it doesn't punish for that, and I think that's one of the most rewarding things. Like, you can just go and do things your own way, and everything is still totally available and accessible to you. Like, you can still be the Master Chief, stronger than everyone, fearing no one.
Yeah, nothing in the side scope is essential.
Yeah.
If you just want to power through and play the story missions just like a traditional Halo game, you absolutely can. There's a couple of missions part of it where you have to skip around at different locations and find some things.
That
but apart
forces
from
your hand a
that,
bit.
you don't have to engage in the side open world much at all, to be honest. it's up to you if you don't want to do it. But if you do want to do it, there's a lot of fun to be had as well. Like, don't think it's the B content. It's not. It's A content still.
Yeah, it's perfectly complementary to it.
Yeah.
So, but you did touch on my one big concern for the game, which is the old Halo. Go and activate 3 of these. Go and do 4 of that. There's still a little bit of that at times, which
There is still a little bit of that, and which it didn't feel as bad this time around because there's an open world. I think for me,
I was going to say it didn't feel so bad simply because, like, if you went to go do the first or the second or the third of whatever that thing happened to be, spoilers for people, the second, third, fourth time, every time there'd be a little interaction there between yourself and the weapon / new Cortana, that would justify why you're being there. You can see a change in something, or you can see this. Like, if you just did it the once, it might have been a little bit jarring for this instant result of whatever happened. Which,
they've used it to space the story elements out as well. So it's been well thought out. It is a traditional Halo thing, but it's also, you're out in the open world, you get distracted on the way to wherever you're going. Oh, there's something over there I can do. Pretty goldfish syndrome on the way to something, and that's how I tend to play these games. Is I get distracted on the way to the main thing, and then eventually get back on the path. So it worked really well for me, and it never felt like the library from Halo 1. There was nothing like that where you just kind of, it was rinse repeat for an hour. Whereas it was different every time. Each of those, like, 4 points that Paul's talking about is a different encounter. Even when you get to the place, like, there's a different enemy loadout. There's a different different landscape, so your options change. That sort of thing. So they've done well to keep the variety in mixing things up.
And actually, I mean, we didn't really touch on it properly, but some new enemy types that have popped up in there as well work well and complement things. Though there wasn't too many times where I actually saw those new types. And just to keep things basic, they're a flying type variant. I won't kind of go any deeper than that for people, but you don't really see them mixing too much with the rest.
No, there's the new assault jackals. They're brand new, so they're like jackals but with little shields on their arms, and they're a lot more nimble and quicker
with needlers and
things like that. There's also there's like 3 or 4 different variants of the Sentinel drones that have been in most of the Halo games.
I think it's some variants of those that I kind of took most notice of, but they didn't really drop them in with the rest of the Banished. They tend to be on their own because they were Sentinels, I guess, and they just kill everything. So the Banished are probably just in much trouble from them as you are. But I think it was a good variety. The elites now are super cool. There's a lot of very different levels of enemies that are immediately recognizable based on color or shields or shape,
headgear. It's very easy to recognize the rank and file and who's going to be a tougher combatant than who, and you can focus or build your strategy around those immediate visual cues, making you going into the encounter, you have the knowledge you need. You're not guessing at any point.
It all works and is balanced really, really well. Any final thoughts about Halo Infinite?
Well, I'm super positive on this. There's very minor little issues every now and then I've come across. Like, there's one real tough enemy you get stuck. It's a giant with a hammer, and you get stuck in a very small space.
Yes.
And that was a very frustrating battle. That was about the only thing I come across that didn't feel balanced. It felt more like luck than skill to take that guy out.
And he had like, he was really, really fast too. Like, when he decided to turn on you, and you couldn't just turn and run. And the grapple, because it was so limited, the grapple wasn't going to be enough to help you either. Yes, it's a good point. I hated that encounter.
So that was not a great encounter, but otherwise I think everything else has been really well balanced. It's a really good effort from 343, and it's really the game they needed to make. And they've come through. The extra year of development's obviously been spent well. It's not the best
coming back, and
it's not the best looking game ever, but it's certainly not an ugly one. It's still quite good looking. They've done really well, and it's what Halo and it's what Xbox needed. They needed Halo to be big.
Yep.
And I think they've done it.
Yeah, it looks stunning. It plays incredibly well, and all those new features really complement the core experience. It's masterful.
the most important thing about it, it feels like Halo. No matter how many new things they've added to it, it feels like Halo. It feels there's a lot of that wonder from the first game in it. They've somehow made Halo an unknown again, which is really cool. A big part of Halo's nostalgia for a lot of people, and me included, is that first time you step onto the Halo, and the first time you learn everything in this universe. And they've somehow managed to get that feeling into Halo Infinite, which I think is probably the biggest achievement of the whole thing.
Yeah, no, they've done a fantastic job. Even this Sony pony here can't argue the fact that it's very quickly become one of my favorite games of the year. I've had a blast playing the entirety of this thing, outside of that one encounter. So yeah, any other thoughts from you at all, Matt? Where can people find your review?
You can find it on Player 2. It'll be up when this goes live, and hopefully it will be finished. It should be.
as of when we record this, which is still a little while before the embargo, do you have a grade in mind?
Yeah, look, I'm probably going to go with an A- at this point, so pretty darn good.
Yeah, that's a really, really, really good game. So make sure to look out for Halo. It's out this week on Xbox One, on the Xbox Series line, as well as PC via the Xbox Store and Steam. So you can get it anywhere where there's Xbox support. Not to mention, I guess you can play it on your phone and everything with xCloud and all that sort of stuff these days. So you've got no excuses. Go out and play Halo Infinite. It's a fantastic title. Thank you to Xbox Australia for providing us both with codes for the game. Matt, for you for the review and the preview, and for myself the review code, which has helped make this possible. So thank you to everyone involved with that. Matt, where can people find you to hear more of your thoughts on Halo and everything else gaming related and
head over to Huso81. Huso81 on Twitter, or just Player2AU, which is the more G version of my thoughts.
And Paul James Games for me. Again, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Catch this on podcast feeds or YouTube. Tune in for all the other stuff. If you're an Xbox fan, we discussed Forza Horizon 5 recently, so you can go check out some thoughts on that. Everyone seems to be loving it, especially the audio version. Maybe they didn't have to see their faces and they're happy. Our faces, sorry, and they're happy.
Everyone loves Forza.
Forza's good. So they're having a good year, Xbox, and this is the cherry on top. So thanks a lot for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Gotcha.